Australia's most disturbing female killer, the murder of John Price. When we think about violent crime and notorious killers, studies consistently show that men make up the overwhelming majority of those responsible. But every so often, there is an exception so disturbing, so calculated, that it shatters every assumption we hold. One of those rare and shocking cases is Katherine Knight and her horrific murder of John Charles Thomas Price. The crime was so brutally gruesome that it didn't just horrify the public, it stunned the courtroom, left even seasoned investigators shaken, and secured her place among Australia's most notorious female killers. Welcome back to True Crime 360. If you haven't been here before, I'm Jessica, and I'll be taking you on an in-depth journey into true crimes from around the world. My goal is to shed light on the stories of victims, hold perpetrators accountable, and explore the pursuit of justice. If you enjoy what you hear, please consider subscribing, liking, and leaving a comment. I would love to hear your thoughts. Everything I share is based on my own research, and I encourage you to dig deeper, do your own research, and form your own opinion. Without further ado, let's dive into today's case. Katherine Knight was born on October 24, 1955, in Tenterfield, New South Wales, Australia, into a deeply dysfunctional and unconventional family. Her mother, Barbara Ruffin, was married to John Ruffin and had 4 sons with him in the small town of Aberdeen in New South Wales Hunter Valley. But behind closed doors, Barbara had an affair and eventually left with Kenneth Charles Knight, a friend and co-worker of her husband. Barbara went on to have 4 more children with Ken, including a pair of twin girls born in 1955 in Tenterfield, one of whom was Katherine Knight. Ken was a violent alcoholic who often sexually assaulted Barbara, and she, in turn, would share these inappropriate details and express her hatred toward men to her daughters. From childhood, Katherine was known to have severe behavioral issues. She struggled to form healthy relationships, exhibited violent outbursts, and had difficulty regulating her emotions. Teachers and peers remembered Katherine as unpredictable and aggressive, someone whose anger could erupt violently over even the smallest provocation. During the investigation, Katherine told her psychiatrist that, until the age of 11, she was repeatedly sexually abused by several members of her family, though she said her father was not among them. As a teenager, Katherine Knight left school early and entered the workforce, eventually landing what she called her dream job at a local abattoir. The work involved slaughtering animals, a task she reportedly excelled at and took an unsettling pride in. Before the murder that shocked the nation, Katherine had been responsible for multiple violent incidents and had numerous encounters with police. Throughout her romantic relationships, Katherine had a long history of domestic violence, and her former partners later described lives filled with severe abuse, constant threats, and fear when they were with her. Katherine married her first husband, David Stanford Kellett, a co-worker, in 1974. On their wedding night, she reportedly tried to strangle him, and the marriage quickly became violent. On one occasion, a heavily pregnant Katherine burned all of Kellett's clothes and shoes, then struck him over the head with a frying pan because he had arrived home late from a darts competition. Police initially considered pressing charges, but Katherine convinced Kellett to drop them. By May 1976, shortly after the birth of their first child, Kellett left Katherine for another woman, apparently unable to cope with the abuse. The very next day, witnesses saw Katherine pushing her newborn in a pram down the street, violently shaking it from side to side and smashing it into fences and poles. She was admitted to St. Elmo's Hospital, diagnosed with postnatal depression, and spent several weeks recovering. After her release, Katherine's violence escalated. She placed her 2-month-old daughter on a railway line just minutes before a train arrived. Fortunately, a homeless man foraging nearby rescued the baby. Katherine was arrested and returned to St. Elmo's Hospital, but she was able to sign herself out the following day. A few days later, Katherine slashed a woman's face with a knife and made her drive as she searched for Kellett. The woman escaped at a service station and called the police. By the time the police arrived, Katherine had taken a young boy hostage, threatening him with a knife. Police disarmed her with brooms, and she was admitted to Morisset Psychiatric Hospital. During her stay, she admitted that she had planned to kill the mechanic who fixed Kellett's car, allowing him to leave. When Kellett learned of the incident, he left his new girlfriend and moved back with his mother to support Katherine. Katherine was released on August 9, 1976, into the care of her mother-in-law and Kellett. After reconciling, Katherine and Kellett moved to Ipswich, west of Brisbane, where they welcomed their second daughter on March 6, 1980. After nearly a decade of relentless violence and threats throughout their marriage, Kellett eventually left Catherine for good. In 1986, Catherine met 38-year-old miner David Saunders, and within a few months, he moved in with her and her daughters, but Catherine soon grew suspicious of his activities when she wasn't around. Their relationship quickly spiraled into chaos. She would throw him out, only to follow him to his old apartment, begging him to return. In May 1987, her violence took a horrifying turn. She cut the throat of Saunders' 2-month-old puppy in front of him, threatening that he would suffer the same fate if he ever had an affair, before knocking him unconscious with a frying pan. Saunders' friend recalled that it was common to see Saunders with cuts and bruises across his face. The following year, in June 1988, Catherine gave birth to a daughter with Saunders. The relationship with Saunders reached its terrifying climax during a heated argument, when she struck him in the face with a hot iron and then stabbed him in the stomach with a pair of scissors. Saunders went into hiding for several months, but when he finally returned to see his daughter, he discovered that Catherine had gone to the police, falsely accusing him of abuse and obtaining an apprehended violence order against him. Around 1990, Catherine met John Chillingworth, and over the next 3 years, they had a son together. Eventually, Catherine left Chillingworth for John Charles Thomas Price, the man she had been secretly seeing before ending her previous relationship. Price was born on April 4, 1955, and was a father of 3 when he met Catherine. Known in his community as hardworking, friendly, and devoted to his children, he was a man well liked by everyone who knew him. At first, the relationship seemed promising. His children liked Catherine, and despite being aware of her violent reputation, Price allowed her to move into his house in 1995. However, in 1998, Knight and Price fought over his refusal to marry her. In retaliation, she videotaped items he had allegedly stolen from work and sent the tape to his boss, which got Price fired from the job he had held for 17 years. That same day, he kicked her out, but a few months later, they restarted the relationship. This time, he did not allow her to move back in. On February 28, 2000, after a series of assaults and being stabbed in the chest, Price reached a breaking point and filed a restraining order at the Scone Magistrates Court. That very afternoon, he even told his co-workers that if he didn't show up for work the next day, it would be because Catherine had murdered him. Despite their pleas not to return home, Price insisted he had to. He feared that if he stayed away, Knight would harm his children. The following morning, March 1st, neighbors, alarmed by bloodstains on Price's front door, called the police. When officers arrived, they were met with a horrifying scene that shocked even seasoned investigators: Price's body mutilated inside the home. In the lounge room, Price's headless, deskinned body dangled from a butcher's hook. His head simmered in a stew on the stove, and slices of his flesh had been cooked and laid out with vegetables, and gravy intended as a meal for his children, with each plate labeled with one of their names. Bloodstains throughout the house suggested that Price had tried to escape and had even made it outside briefly, but Catherine dragged him back inside. The autopsy revealed the shocking brutality. Before mutilating his body, Price had been stabbed at least 37 times across both the front and back, using a butcher's knife. On March 2, 2001, Catherine was charged with the murder of Price. She initially attempted to plead guilty to the lesser charge of manslaughter, but prosecutors rejected her plea. The trial for Catherine's murder of Price began on October 15, 2001, during which she pleaded not guilty. Catherine's defense did not deny that she killed Price. Instead, her lawyers argued diminished responsibility, pointing to her long history of mental illness and a violent upbringing. However, psychiatric experts testified that despite her psychological issues, she fully understood her actions and their consequences at the time of the murder. Because of the overwhelming evidence, the trial did not last long. On November 8, 2001, Catherine Knight changed her plea to guilty for the murder of Price. At sentencing, the judge stated that the extreme violence, the deliberate nature of Catherine's actions, and her complete lack of remorse placed the crime among the worst the court had encountered and deserving of a severe penalty. Catherine was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, becoming the first woman in Australian history to receive such a sentence. The judge ruled that Catherine posed a permanent danger to the community and that there was no prospect of rehabilitation. She was ordered never to be released. With the verdict finally delivered, do you think justice was truly served for John Charles Thomas Price? Or could the system have done more to prevent such a tragedy? Until we meet again for the next case, wherever you are in the world, take care of yourself. And thank you for joining me as we uncover the dark truths behind real-life crimes.